All right, thank you very much. Big, huge thank you to Bonnie and to Mike Lennon and to Joyce and Bill and Kaylee and Phil, President Leahy and Provost Anns Sclater, and everyone else who has welcomed me personally, and Akashic and Ibrahim Ahmad more broadly to this wonderful, wonderful program. It's an honor to be invited to share my thoughts with all of you here tonight. I was originally introduced to this program by Kaylee Jones, and the first residency I participated in was in January 2008, exactly 10 years ago. And from the perspective of a book publisher, it would be hard to overstate how much the program has grown since that time. The number of students being published has exploded since the days when Marlon James and Taylor Paulides were students here. Before winning the Booker Prize, one of the most coveted literary prizes on the globe, Marlon James connected to the program through Kaylee as well, around the time that Akashic published Marlon's debut novel, John Crow's Devil, in 2005. My relationship with this program has deepened through the birth of Kaylee Jones' books. While not every author who Kaylee selects comes through the Wilkes program, Wilkes's fingerprints are all over it. And I don't even know if we could have launched the imprint without Wilkes. Kaylee started her imprint at a very fortuitous time in terms of the climate in the broader world of publishing in 2014, when Kaylee Jones' books launched with Unmentionables by Wilkes grad Lori Lowenstein. While I believe that being a writer or an artist of any sort will probably always be a long and difficult road to follow, I also believe that there's never been a better time to be writing and to be publishing writing. Due in part to the internet, but also to other technological strides, there have never been so many opportunities for writers to get their work out to the public. As some of you have heard me say before, people older than myself in the publishing business, writers, editors, publishers, have often lamented the passage of the good old days of publishing, back when the printed word was more valued and our citizenry had a longer attention span. But as we all know, those good old days of publishing were a straight white man's game. And I have to say up front that I am very non-judgmental, and I have no problem with straight white men. Honestly, some of my very best friends are heterosexual white guys. I love Hemingway, Faulkner, Steinbeck, Mailer, and James Jones. But in the so-called good old days, there was very little room or interest in publishing non-white writers. Women were largely shut out, and openly gay writing was scarce. That's not a publishing climate that I would want to be a part of. Issues of fairness and equality aside, what sometimes gets lost in discussions about inclusion in the literary world is that the ultimate pursuit is excellence, and inclusivity serves that pursuit. If you take away Toni Morrison, you've taken away a cornerstone of contemporary American publishing. If you take away Junot Diaz or Marlon James, the world starts to get a little more boring. To be clear, when I discuss the sacrosanct goal of boredom reduction, I am not at all trying to discourage white writers. While in recent years, writers of color have begun winning major literary prizes and hitting bestseller lists more frequently, the overall landscape of publishing remains dominated by white writers. But more importantly, the increasingly bountiful avenues for getting published in 2018 is a development that benefits all aspiring writers. The problem is, some white people don't see this. Some white people see African Americans and other ethnic groups as somehow being favored, which is an amazing thing. An African American woman or man might suffer certain indignities on a monthly, weekly, daily basis, year after year after year. So many of these indignities are basically invisible to many white people, yet they are there and they persist. But when a white person loses out on some opportunity that goes to a person of color, it's like a mortal wound to the sensitive white heart. Not getting every advantage all of the time is hard for white people, particularly us white men. We are quick to cry out things like reverse discrimination. It's not fair. Statements like these are ugly cousins to the ridiculous and simple-minded white people plea of all lives matter, which is, of course, a gross and insidious distortion of what Black Lives Matter is all about. So I have to pause for a moment to explain why I've gotten all soapboxy on you. I feel like when you're invited to give a keynote address to a group of students, you're supposed to be the wise elder one helping to shine a light on a path forward through the darkness. And when I say the darkness, I'm not referring to President Trump. Say what you want about Trump, but there's one thing I think we can all agree on about him. He's a person. But to borrow a phrase from his eloquent presidential lexicon, I'm not here to talk about that shithole. Yet I digress. As you can see, it's hard for me to moderate my opinions now that I'm the wise elder one delivering a keynote address. So let's pretend for a second that I'm not completely full of crap. Let's pretend I'm a very intelligent person with some wisdom to share, and that the expectation is that I will share a spoonful of such wisdom here tonight. Okay, so back to the white people thing. While more non-white writers are being published than ever before, the same can't be said about the complexion of the publishing business itself. The people who work in the business. This is something I discussed a little bit, ranted about a little bit yesterday in the publishing panel. A couple of years ago, Publishers Weekly issued a report showing that the publishing business, the workers in the business, it's 89% white. This is quite a remarkable number when you take into account that the business is primarily based in New York City, one of the most ethnically diverse cities in the world. Plus, it's actually a socially liberal business, publishing. I would guess that a clear majority of people in the business voted for Barack Obama twice. And yet, you would find more diversity in the automobile industry, the music business, academia, or almost any other major industry. As a result, there's this unfortunate white default setting in the literary world that I continue to encounter time and time again. And I'll give you a couple examples of what I mean by the white default setting. Akashic Books, we publish a series of anthologies called the Noir series, which are anthologies that are based around almost always individual cities. It started with a book called Brooklyn Noir, which was edited by Tim McLaughlin, who was briefly a Wilkes student. These anthologies, the idea is that a bunch of different writers can write stories each set in a different neighborhood of a given city. And it's a wonderful series. We've done about 90 books in the series so far, and sort of 90 different cities around the world that we have these anthologies based in. So I got a proposal one day for a writer who wanted to edit the book Detroit Noir, which we have since this time, we have published the book, though this writer who I'm talking about was not the editor. Their proposal for Detroit Noir had a list of 15 authors. It was, I think it was 12 white men, 2 white women, and 1 African-American man. Now, Detroit, the purpose of these books is to really capture the essence of a city, the sort of underbelly of city through noir short stories. So it was very problematic, of course, that this proposal was overwhelmingly white with 1 token black contributor in a city that's majority African American. It didn't conform at all to our vision of what this series is supposed to be about. So I explained to this writer proposing the book to us that we at Akashic are very serious about our boredom reduction and that we weren't going to pursue his proposal. He offered to revise the proposal more to our liking, but we said no thanks. It was very clear that this proposal was going nowhere. We got a similar proposal for Boston Noir, which later Someone else, Dennis Lehane, the great best-selling writer Dennis Lehane, ended up editing Boston Noir for us. But long before that, we got this other proposal for Boston Noir that was, once again, all white people. So I pointed it out to the person, the writer proposing, that this was ridiculous. The point of the series is to reflect the city, not just like invite your buddies to write some stories. And the person responded, well, Boston's really a white city. So I thought, I don't know about that. And so I went online, I looked it up, and sure enough, there's a lot of white people in Boston. There are, it's just over 50% white, but there's those other 47% of the population. Now this person proposing it, she probably meant that when she said that it was a white city, she probably meant that the literary world in Boston is largely white. But that's not what she said. She said it was a white city. When I said that we didn't want to pursue her proposal, she offered to revise it more to our liking. And I said, no thanks, you strike us as a boring person, and we happen to have a boredom reduction initiative, so it's just not a good fit. The default white setting is so extreme in publishing that the non-white people become invisible. Boston's not a white city. Having said all of this, in our promotion of the Noir series, we don't highlight diversity. When you pick up the books, there's nothing on it about inclusion or diversity on any of the books. 90 books, you look at it, you won't find those words anywhere on those books. What we promote is how great the books are and how beautifully, malevolently, and insightfully they capture the cities. That's what the books are about. That's what we're trying to do. I've also encountered the white default setting in my role as a book festival organizer. As Bonnie mentioned, I'm the co-founder of the annual Brooklyn Book Festival, which has been going on for 12 years and is now New York City's largest public book fair. It's the middle of September every year. Anyone who hasn't been there, I encourage you to come. There's hundreds of authors participating in programs on over 12 different stages on a Saturday and a Sunday in mid-September. One area that the Brooklyn Book Festival has always excelled in has been in the area of inclusion. Our programs are incredibly diverse and exciting, and the standing room only audiences love them. This diversity supports the festival's goal of presenting the very best programs that we can, but it's something we have to actively protect because of the white default setting. One year I was talking to one of my fellow festival organizers about a group of 10 programs that he was working on. I pointed out to him that the level of diversity in his programs was lower than what we are generally aspiring for across all of our programming. He replied that he couldn't see there was some diversity in his programming. I'm not saying that it was all white programming. I'm just saying it wasn't at the level that we pride ourselves on at the festival. And he replied that he couldn't see how he would be able to increase the diversity of the authors in the programming without compromising the literary merit of the programming. And I thought, you have it exactly wrong, you boring, boring man. So I'm here tonight to encourage all of you to join the Boredom Reduction Initiative as you move forward in this exciting, dynamic, flourishing, and increasingly diverse literary world of 2018 and beyond. The point here is not about feeling guilty, and I truly mean this. I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty about anything. Feelings of guilt, I don't think that they serve any purpose. The point isn't that everyone should become a bleeding heart liberal. And despite my earlier comments, I'm actually quite non-ideological. I myself am a left-wing person, but as reflected in our list is not 100% left-wing. It's only 98%. But this issue is more about appreciating the shortcomings of American liberalism, understanding that true social change, and in this case, true literary excellence, can only come about through very hard work, not simply voting for a black president or decrying another president's racist policies. Almost everyone in this room is a writer. You are creative people and you are hard workers, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So I'm talking about a situation that needs creativity, hard work, persistence, compassion, and a deep understanding of literary excellence. Be conscious, be ambitious, shoot for the stars, do the work. Onward. Thank you very much.